Welcome to another episode of Expendables by Fibonacci X. Today we have Gunjan Aggarwal, an operation and strategy leader with over 15 years of experience across product, analytics, edtech, marketplace, and commodities, and has done his MBA from IIM Calcutta. Gunjan brings a sharp, executive-focused lens to scaling businesses. His expertise spans KPI dashboarding, process improvement, AI, and mindfulness. He's also doing his master's right now in psychology and known for his diverse leadership style and strong customer focus. He has consistently driven impact through program management, transformational leadership, and mentoring teams. In today's episode, we will deep dive into what really breaks and what truly works when startup scales.
Thank you first of all for this opportunity. I have worked for more than 15 years across corporates and startups, and I completed my MBA from IIM Calcutta in 2009. And for the next 7, 8 years, I was working in the commodities industry um, as a analyst and consultant, uh, traveling the world, handling clients globally. Then I moved into the startup ecosystem. It was a very exciting space, and I work with data analytics company and edtech company and IT marketplace company. Last few years, I have been a freelance strategy consultant, helping startups with operational excellence, uh, dashboarding, even training their teams on sales and communication. And as you rightly mentioned, I have completed my psychology MA because I got interested in counseling and
Yeah,
coaching. So yeah,
yes. And again, we have talked about it about mindfulness and all you coming into venture edu with that topic. So
yes,
it's very interesting. You have a very diverse
it's
background.
great work that your team is doing in creating a startup school, so to say. And even though there are some other such initiatives in India, but I think there is space for more and better ones to bridge the gap between traditional education and the landscape that
Yes.
uh, the thriving startup ecosystem in India provides today. Nobody really prepares entrepreneurs for on the ground realities for really building a startup and scaling it and finding success.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we can start with having some questions about scaling and early stage startup itself because you have an experience in scaling and operational work you have done. So my first question would be, when you look into early stage startups, what are the first operational cracks you typically notice?
See, I think what I have seen is that surprisingly, even startups that have received funding, seed stage, Series A, even at Series B, they're still struggling with the PMF trap.
Okay.
So very few startups do the initial research of actually finding a gap in the market. There are some notions that the founders have that, this might work or there might be a gap. But
Mm,
the key question is there might be a gap, but are people willing to pay for it? And are people willing to
mm,
pay enough for you to build a business on that? So many startups actually get funding, and even investors are hoping. Investors in the initial phases bank mainly on the founders, as they say, team and TAM. So they look at the total addressable market and they assume that this team will be able to gap that um, gap, and they will be able to get a business and get profits. But after burning a lot of money, then they realize that maybe it's not happening. So the
yeah.
PMF gap is real, the product market fit. You're offering a product and there is a market, but is there a fit?
Mm,
Maybe the market needs something else.
yeah.
So that's a classic gap, and almost one third to half of startups fail because they build something that nobody wants. They might not be in the entirely wrong ballpark, but even in the right ballpark, they're not able to have features or have a go to market strategy that does justice to that typical TAM that they're building for. The second problem that I have seen is that a typical small startup founder mentality, they focus exclusively on the founder phase. So
Okay.
that's critical. The founders are the ones taking the risk. They're the ones making everything happen. They're the ones finding that gap and building something and getting the team there. But they often fail to build the governance layer where the financial or administrative or the human resource functions and layers are built. The moment you grow beyond 5 6 into double digits as a company headcount, these things start making a difference. I'm not saying
Okay.
that you need large teams. You need an
Hmm.
HR team or an admin team or a finance team. Even the founders might be handling that themselves, but it's a question of, I think, building those processes, Nina. So
Yes.
they keep building product, they keep focusing on sales, and they keep obsessing about the customer, but they miss these other governance layers, which comes back to haunt them.
Yes. It's a very
Uh,
rightly said point.
yeah. And if I think about what are the other operational cracks typically happens
Hmm.
in early stage startups, I think the other one will be logistics, probably if you are in a service or product delivery space, because
Hmm.
a disconnect happens when your GTM is good, customers are coming on board, then the customer delivers that what the brand promised and what it is able to deliver logistically or post sales, we call it customer success. And I've worked with more than a few startups on customer success. The customer is not able to use the product fully or to grasp its features. That's where your entire effort of acquiring a customer goes down the drain.
Hmm.
So the fulfillment failure and eroded customer trust in the initial scaling is a disaster. So
Yes.
unfortunately, all of these are working together, and I think it's the founder's responsibility to take a step back and identify these gaps and build processes and teams.
So one interesting point you mentioned in the beginning was PMF. So I think everyone, every startup, when you enter into a startup ecosystem, everyone is talking
Yeah,
about product market fit and if is your product actually rated in the market and are customers actually willing to pay, again, you mentioned. So I'll
yeah,
like some of your pointers, like how can a founder in his initial stage, maybe after getting a seed funding or maybe having an exploratory idea, how can they find that is their product right? Is there some kind of test that they should do, or other than basic research, what can they do to find that product market fit?
if I think about a few successful startups, I think what they have done, what has worked is don't go on adding every feature and believing that if I build it, they'll come.
Hmm.
It's not going to happen. Even the first prototype that you build, you need to tap into your network. And that's where, if you have funding, that's where the network of the angel or the VC also comes into play. Connect to the first set of users and don't charge them. Get them to use your product and see how they're using it, or your service, and get extensive feedback on what might be the friction points and is it really solving what you wanted it to solve, or do you need to pivot even at this point? So that initial cohort of users, call it beta,
Hmm.
is important. Then comes the phase where you are relatively confident that it's solving some real issue. Then you need to test the waters of whether they're going to pay for it and how much.
Yeah.
Initially, obviously, you don't have a credential and you're still making a place for yourself in the market. So you got to price it accordingly or try the freemium model where certain features are free, but certain more desired features are paid. And there you start your revenue journey. So finding that initial set of users, you need to beg and borrow users. You need to go out to them in the name of. I've seen some very smart founders approach saying they just need feedback. They just want to know how the product is. And then gently at the end of the meeting, they'll say, would you like to try it? We are willing to give it to you for free. So that's the hustle. That's the hustle part of finding the first set of users.
So again, there was one point I'd like to highlight that was mentioned in our previous question, which was of GTM. So you have worked with many startups, and I would like to know some of the startups that have some like great GTM strategies, because what is that good strategy and what is that great strategy for go to market that startups can use? And you can also mention some examples that you have in mind for some of the startups that have reach to the customers, build that trust, because coming into a new brand, you have to get that trust in. So anything that comes to your mind.
So good versus great, as I said, probably the most important point is don't make the perfect product. It's never going to be real. You will, as a passionate founder, as a passionate product guy, always think of more features and try to make your product perfect. I mean, maybe 90% of the time I've seen the founders being so passionate about their product that they believe if they build a perfect product, everything else will follow. There's so
Okay.
many perfect products out there that are not being used, and imperfect products have captured the market.
Mhm.
So the moment you have a working prototype and prioritize the most important features first, go to the market, get people to use it. Don't try to be in a place where whatever the user wants, you can respond by saying, yeah, we have it. No,
Mhm.
that's not what you need. What you need is a few functional features. And even if you see the largest companies, I mean, today you see the LLM revolution.
Yeah.
Why did the biggest of companies like Google, it was sitting on the same technology,
Mhm.
but OpenAI launched the chatbot, the ChatGPT first, because Google never saw it as a complete client-worthy product. And as an enterprise, maybe it was justified. But ChatGPT entered the market 3 years ago with a very imperfect product, which gave wrong answers, hallucinated, um,
Mhm.
kept going around in circles. But most of its learning has now come in from users using it imperfectly, and it has the first mover's advantage. That's a massive example of how an imperfect product can still take the market by storm.
Yes.
So focus
And
on
for
getting out there
Mhm. Yes,
is
and for
probably my answer.
yeah. So for the new founders, I think this would be a very good advice, because for some founder it is like when we'll perfect the product will come to the market. But
Yeah.
again, this is some gold advice for them. So we have started to touch the AI angle, which is very buzzing as of now. So we can also
Yeah.
talk about how the AI has reshaping the dashboard, the workflows, or the decision making in startups. As you know, you're also working with some of the companies on their AI areas. So
Yeah,
love
I
to
have
touch upon
created
that.
dashboards for some large companies. I have helped them visualize. See, I mean, if you're not using AI in some way today, um,
Hmm.
I think you're already obsolete. And I know that's a very harsh statement to make, but given how imperfect the AI is, still, I would say that if you're not using it even in its imperfect stage, you will never know when that stage has been crossed. And even
Hmm.
today, it's very capable. So, for example, I know a lot of people are using it for ideation, for marketing, for creating thought leadership content, whether it's text or images or infographics or even posts. But you can also use it for building your dashboards. You can use it for statistical analysis, regression. You can use it for data visualization and dashboarding. So it is applicable across the value chain of the entire startup. That's what I feel.
Yeah, we just had a discussion in my last podcast as well about the AI and the coming tools that we use. So, we had a talk about like we are just using ChatGPT maybe to just create emails for us, which is something I would believe is not the right use of AI when you can, as you mentioned, create dashboard and actually use as a thought partner somehow, get your work done in lesser time and with maybe not that accuracy. You'll obviously need that human brain, but if you have to, if a simple task will take you 5 to 6 hours and it's doing it at 1 hour. So it is making you productive in some way.
Yeah. See, the research part is already done very well by these um, LLMs. You need to do a market research. You need to understand more about the customer. You need to understand the competition better, their features, their pricing. You can already put in a nuanced prompt and get a report. So these research tasks, if you're not using AI, then you're already outdated. So this allows you to be better informed and better prepared about your product, about the competition, about your target customer. How do you use it in the processes inside your company? So even you can use AI for brainstorming on KRAs and KPIs for your team,
Mm.
for building a dashboard and including AI within the dashboard to, you can use AI agents to auto trigger certain tasks at certain milestones, certain stages. That takes a lot of bandwidth, clears a lot of bandwidth for you as a founder to
Mm.
really focus on the core uh, innovation and features of the product. Building the product itself, I mean, depending on your proficiency of how much you understand coding, you can use vibe coding and there are tools ranging from Replit, Cursor, uh, GitHub Copilot, obviously Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT's Codex is there. I have used all of them at different stages, and I would say that things are still very fluid. 1 week, I feel Codex is the best. Next week, suddenly Gemini starts doing better with another upgrade, and the third week, it's GitHub Copilot. Uh,
Mm.
choose a tool and stick with it. Maybe if that works for you. But even the product, building the product, uh, is much more easier with vibe coding. You don't need to go out to an IT agency necessarily.
Yeah. So, pivoting our conversation on the psychology side, because something that is very different from what we are actually doing. So, how did you enter into psychology? What was the thought behind it? And like learning, maybe after we don't usually expect people to learn and do masters again. So, I'd love to know what was
Yeah.
the thinking behind it and get some pointers for me as well. See how is it
Wow.
to.
See, psychology is essentially a study of an individual's thoughts, behaviors, and actions. So there is a lot that we inherit in our childhood, and a large percentage of our personality is formed right then. And we're not aware of where we are operating from, but certain decisions are natural to us. So I was interested in psychology because I've been through my own mental health journey and I experienced therapy and I thought it was a miracle. And thankfully, I found a good therapist. I mean, in India, there are really not many good therapists, and most of the mental health issues are not serious. If on a scale of mild to moderate to serious, I think 90% would lie on the zone between mild to moderate. Simple
Yeah.
things like workplace stress or relationship issues, prolonged unhappiness, or being ambitious in life but probably struggling. So for various reasons, personal and professional, I tried therapy and it was amazing. So I learned hands-on therapy from a couple of counselors, and then I decided to pursue a formal degree to give my practical understanding some theoretical background. So I completed MS psychology, and there was very interesting subjects. There was lifespan psychology, which talks about how our personality and thought processes grow across our age, different life stages. Social psychology was a subject. There were research subjects, statistics. But in my second year, I mean, there was specialization and I was studying counseling. So you have these various therapy models. So, for example, depending on the person, how aware or capable they are, you have this directive and non directive styles. So non-directive
Mm.
means the person himself is capable of solving their problem, and you're merely acting as a sounding board and giving them a safe space to explore their own problem. While in a directive therapy, it's a bit more hands-on, and you guide them actively towards a solution. Some founders believe in charismatic leadership. They're like, the whole startup is about the founder. It might
Okay.
work. In some cases, you have examples where the founder is a mascot of the startup. But in some
Mm.
cases, you don't know the founder, you just know the company. It's not that one is right and one is wrong, whatever is working, but it has to be a conscious decision on what kind of culture and brand you're building. For example, you cannot separate Elon Musk from his companies. When I
Mm.
think about Tesla or SpaceX, I first think about Musk.
Mm.
So there is a reason. I mean, the DNA that is in his companies is actively built, and even today he's involved in daily operations for each of his companies. If you see his interviews or the interviews of people in his companies or people who have worked in his companies and have quit, they talk about how informed he is. So that
Mm.
level of commitment and probably genius is required. But that's not something that you can just think of and start doing. I mean, you have to reflect on what's actually possible for your startup and which field you're in. So, for example, in our curriculum, we are actively including human biases,
Yes.
50 plus biases that we operate on as humans, and how to actually be aware of that. We're talking about insights and insight generation and hypothesis formulation. Even
Mm.
in decision making founders toolkit, we're talking about first principles thinking. How do you eliminate all the noise and focus on what's actually the fact and base your decisions on that. And as a manager and as a leader, how do you focus on the right decision making? So these are certain, I would say, fundamental aspects that we are actively including in our curriculum. I wanted
That's
to talk about two other concepts.
so,
One
yeah.
is GTM, go to
Okay.
market. So when you build a product, and the next phase is how do you go to the market, and we touched upon it. I think some other points that probably are important in a good GTM strategy, a great GTM strategy, is the funnel versus the flywheel question. So uh,
Okay.
a good GTM has a linear funnel, top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and bottom of the funnel. Everybody knows these terms. But a great one transitions to a flywheel strategy where product and customer acquisition go together. And that's what I was referring to earlier. You keep acquiring more customers and you keep improving your product, and it's a flywheel. It's not a linear model. Talking about KPI dashboards, it's
Yeah.
very important to understand what are your leading indicators and what are your lagging indicators. So lead indicators are those which predict what's going to happen. How are this quarter sales going to be? That those lead indicators will help you kind of predict during the quarter how the quarter is going to be. Not lagging indicators tell you what happened in the quarter. So it's already too
Yes.
late. So it's important to identify lead indicators. For example, customer engagement, how much the customer is engaging with the product and with your team, with your customer success team. And finally, talking about how founders can do a better job when they start scaling. So, one mistake
Mm.
is founders who are tracking everything on their own suddenly find that it's too overwhelming with a growing team and a growing business. So, you cannot chart 30 plus indicators and track them every day. You need to track three metrics, top three metrics, and everything else flows from that. And different senior teams are responsible for different metrics and different parts of the business. So that flow is very important, and that doesn't happen overnight. That's a very carefully articulated planning and execution process. What you can't measure, you can't improve. Everybody knows
Mm.
that. So you need to define these metrics very well. You need to make sure that metrics are being calculated from the ground up, and that you're seeing the right metrics during your day, and you're talking about them. Yeah, I guess that's all from my side.
Yeah, these points are something that would have add a great value for someone as an audience who will be a founder and listening to them. So we really appreciate it. And The from my side also, I have no more questions, and it was again seriously great talking to you. It was a learning experience for me here. So
Thank you for the opportunity, Nina, and I look forward to our future interactions.
yes, thank you so much for your
Have a
time
good
today.
day.
Have you too. Have a nice day. Bye bye.
Bye.